this. Hi, Danville. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police for the town, and we are 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better, and we do that by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of the people we serve. First off, I want to wish everyone a happy Danville Day. Danville, it's a little hot out there, so I'd encourage you to make sure you're drinking a lot of water, be safe. We have some things that we always want you to download, so you can go down in the notes below, download our Wildfire Preparedness Evacuation Guide and the FEMA All Hazards Checklist. Visit the PG&E website. There's a lot of good information there, and there's information on staying up to date when we have things like PSPSs, which you may have seen a community notice about for other areas of the county, hopefully not Danville. And then make sure you sign up for the community warning system. The community warning system is a very robust system. And one thing I want to remind people is we can actually drop a pin and we can send to your cell phone whether you've registered or not. But if you register, you can get it. You can get the alerts catered to your phone. You can get it to your email. You can get it to your home phone. So there's a lot more ways that you can be notified. You can also get notified at your work location. So you may live in Danville, but if you work in Walnut Creek and there's an issue in Walnut Creek, how are you going to know? So please make sure you sign up for the CWS system. Had a couple of calls this week asking if the Danville Police Department put up new cameras. And so they were asking, hey, I see cameras, they're on poles, and I'll kind of zoom in so you can see a little bit. You can see up top there, there's some of the top of the poles. And then if you look towards the bottom, you'll see they're strapped to existing poles. So that's what the cameras look like. Those are not police cameras. They're actually used for traffic surveys. So we did not add any cameras to the town. Every 2 years, we do traffic counts, and we do, some of them are actually turning counts to see how many cars are turning at a certain location. And what they do is they use that data to help with like signal timing, like how long should a light stay green, how long should a turn pocket stay green, all of those things. And so we use a lot of that. And I want to zoom back in. So you can see this one's actually on a no parking sign. If you look up top, that's where the sensor or the camera is. And if you look down bottom, that is where the data collection device is, all the way at the bottom there. And so you'll see those around town. You'll see them for each location. We do it about every 2 years. So you won't just see them in this, we won't wait 2 years to see them, for an area like maybe Diablo Road, right? This is where we're at now is Sycamore, Danville, or San Ramon Valley Boulevard, Camino Ramon. We're kind of in that area. Maybe in 6 months, you might see them up on Diablo Road. Maybe in 6 months after that, you might see them over on El Cerro. So they do rotate around so that it is something that you can see, but just keep an eye out for them. It is something that we do here from time to time, and we do it to help manage our flow of traffic. All right, we're going to cover crime, but this is a live show, so if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Be happy to answer them. You can go to communitycrimemap.com anytime. You can get updates, and you can get sexual offender registry information there. Okay, this is pretty, Danville, you all are doing really well. We've actually seen a sharp decline over the past couple months in collisions. So I just want to say, keep it up. This one was actually, although an injury collision, it was a fairly minor act that caused it. On the 25th, we had an injury collision, and this is where a car backed into a pedestrian on East Prospect and Harts Avenue. So right by the Starbucks store there. So not bad, Danville. One accident is well below our average, so that's looking pretty good. Crime, not so much. No violent crime, which is good. We can go several weeks without a violent crime, so that is very, very good. No burglaries, which means no one broke into a home or a business, but we did have 6 reported thefts. On the 23rd, we had a theft of alcohol from Safeway on Camino Tasajera. On the 25th at 1:18, we had a theft of a vehicle, and this was on the 800 block of Camino Ramon. So this is kind of the Camino Ramon and Camino Ramon and Sycamore Valley Road, right by the Rose Garden Shopping Center. And this is actually pretty interesting. So the owner had their AirPods in the car. And so they were able to track the AirPod, which was in the car. So they were essentially tracking the car. We were able to recover it that same day, which was fantastic. So kudos to the owner. I know it was inadvertent, but it kind of shows you the power. If you put one of these, or if you put an AirPod or an AirTag rather in there, or some similar tracking device, or if you just have a newer car and it's got GPS location, like I know Teslas have them where you can see where every one of your Teslas are. Yeah, you can get us that information and we can find the car really quickly that way. On the 25th, we had, and this is at about 2:10, so this is in the afternoon after lunch. We had a theft of merchandise from the Walgreens on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. And then on the 26th, just before lunch at 11:51, we had a theft of property from an unlocked vehicle in the Safeway parking lot on Camino Tasajara. And then on the 29th, we had a man that left his golf clubs in his driveway and they were stolen. And this was reported on the 29th, but it occurred on the 28th between about 1:30 p.m. and 4 p.m. And then on the 29th, we had a theft of alcohol from the Bevmo on Diablo Road. You can see we are getting hit constantly with these thefts. Safeway, Walgreens, Bevmo, Lunardi's is even getting hit. So we're seeing those quite a bit. Now, last thing I wanted to note, we usually don't note these, but we had 2 stolen vehicles that were recovered. Those are the red circles on the map. The first one was on the 26th, and we think it was actually related to the vehicle theft the day before. The 26th, we located a stolen car in the Best Western parking lot on Camino Ramon, and then on the 27th, a car came into town and was recovered at the Trader Joe's on Railroad. And the recovery was actually because the owner of the car, it was a Dodge Hellcat, the owner had a GPS tracking device on the car. They were able to call us and say, I see my car. It's in the Trader Joe's parking lot right now, and it's been there for an hour or two. We sent officers down there, and we were able to determine that it was unoccupied and recover the person's car. All right, we'll go over the arrest log. September 23rd through the 29th, 2024. So last week. 9:23, a man was jailed on an out-of-county warrant for failing to appear on an assault charge. Let me go over the key again. It's something I've added to this page. DUI means driving under the influence. Jailed means they were booked into the Martinez jail. That's the Martinez detention facility. Cited means they were issued a citation and released. And ALPR stands for automated license plate readers. So on the 23rd, a man was jailed on an out-of-county warrant for failing to appear on an assault charge. On the 23rd, we arrested a man and cited him for an out-of-county warrant for DUI. And then on the 25th, and I'll talk a little bit more detail on this one. On the 25th, a juvenile was cited for evading an officer, driving without a license, and riding an unregistered dirt bike on the road, and the vehicle was towed for 30 days. Okay, so this is what we've been talking about, I think, for probably going on 18 months, but we've been really pushing it, especially on this show, for the last 6 months. These are not e-bikes. Everyone calls them e-bikes because it is a bicycle or a motorcycle, and it has an electric motor. Therefore, people say e-bike. E-bike is a very specific term that means a bike that has either pedal or throttle assist and is got a motor no bigger than 750 watts and can't go faster than 20 or 28 miles an hour based on the class of bike. That is what an e-bike is. What we're seeing out there is we're seeing motorcycles, actual dirt bikes that are electric dirt bikes that are capable of going 40 and 50 miles an hour, and kids are riding them up and down the street. In this case, the officer tried to stop the juvenile. The juvenile ran through a couple of stoplights or signs, and the officer who was on a motorcycle was able to catch him. Now, you have to understand, we have an obligation to all of you. Just because we see a violation doesn't mean that we can just pursue till the wheels fall off. In fact, we've talked about it before. We actually we cancel a great deal of the pursuits in the interest of public safety. It doesn't mean that we don't chase people. We do chase people, but we always will use the balance test and determine, is the need to capture this person worth the risk that's going on to the public? And once the public risk outweighs the need to catch them, we'll stop the pursuit. In this particular case, it never passed that level. So the officer was able to locate him. And what I want to do is I want to cover, what does it mean to evade? Because we're seeing more kids, so you're mostly sons, we're seeing your kids run from the police, where our officers will get behind, they will try to make a stop, lights and siren, and they'll take off on these motorcycles. And I just want to stress how important it is. If you remember, about a month ago, it was actually the same officer. He was on Camino Tasajara. A kid was riding about 35 miles an hour down Camino Tasajara on a motorcycle, a dirt bike, a bike that is not authorized to be on the road. It's not registered, without a license. And so the officer stopped him. Well, this juvenile complied, everything. All that officer did at that point was he just towed it, and he didn't even tow it for the 30 days. He issued the kid no citation. He simply towed the vehicle to make sure that crime wouldn't continue. In this case, when we have a juvenile that's running from us, creating hazards, driving that vehicle illegally without a license, unregistered, The officer, with his discretion, decided to cite the child out for evading an officer, for driving without a license, and tow his vehicle for 30 days. So let's look at what does it mean to evade a peace officer. Again, this is from the California jury instructions. So this is if someone were to go to court, this is what a judge would read to the jury so they could understand what they're being asked to review. So to prove that the defendant is guilty of the crime, people must prove that a peace officer driving a motor vehicle was pursuing the defendant, and the defendant, who was also driving a motor vehicle, willfully fled from or tried to elude the officer, intending to evade the officer. That doesn't mean you didn't see the officer. I was retelling this story a few days ago. There was a time where I actually was behind a car trying to get them to pull over for about 2.5 miles. And they didn't pull over, but it was very clear to me that they simply didn't see me. They were stopping at stop signs, stopping at stoplights. And it wasn't until I got beside them and I was able to get their attention that they pulled over. That's not evading the police. Evading the police is when you do it willfully and with the intent to evade the officer. Now, the rest of this has to be true. So those are the two elements, but the rest of this has to be true. There was at least one lighted red lamp visible from the front of the police officer's vehicle. That's how our vehicles are equipped. We give one solid red plus some flashy lights. The defendant either saw or reasonably should have seen the lamp. The peace officer's vehicle was sounding a siren as reasonably necessary, and the peace officer's vehicle was distinctly marked, and the peace officer was wearing a uniform. So we have to look like a cop, we have to drive a vehicle that looks like it's a police vehicle, and we have to have proper equipment. In this case, the officer had all of that. But let's cover what some of these mean, like willfully. Willfully, when he or she does so willingly or on purpose, it is not required that he or she intend to break the law, hurt someone else, or gain an advantage. The distinctively marked vehicle. This comes into play when you see what we call slick top cars that don't have lights on front. So let's look at what they define as a distinctively marked police vehicle. Has features that are reasonably noticeable to other drivers, including a red lamp, siren, and at least one other feature that makes it look different from vehicles that are not used for law enforcement purposes. And a distinctive uniform means clothing adopted by a law enforcement agency to identify or distinguish members of its force. The uniform does not have to be complete or of any particular level of formality. However, a badge without more is not enough. All right. So we understand the law. Now, how is it that an officer can take this vehicle for 30 days? And I want to show you that law. It's 14602.6, the vehicle code. And I've highlighted because there's a lot of or portions of the law, and I just want to kind of pick out the parts that pertain to this case. So whenever a peace officer determines that a person was driving a vehicle, and there's a couple of different options here, the last one being without having ever been issued a driver's license, the peace officer may either immediately arrest that person and cause the removal and seizure of that vehicle. There's a couple more ors. And then a vehicle so impounded shall be impounded for 30 days. That's a long time. And so I hope you understand that the point of me highlighting this case in particular, and I really want to contrast it with that first one we talked about a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Our officers do have discretion. So the greater the severity or the lack of compliance or the unwillingness to change behavior, right, the more the officer is likely to not give a verbal warning and give a written citation and tow the vehicle and do those things. So one, I would say, just for starters, just don't break the law. If you do, don't run from the police. That puts a lot of people, including the person running, in danger, and we don't want to see that. So we would rather, again, my best day is when we don't make an arrest and we write no tickets, because that means conditions aren't such that someone else is put in danger. In order for us to arrest someone, that means that either someone has hurt someone or the conditions are such that they provided an atmosphere where someone could be hurt, and we don't want either of those. All right, so let me see. Larry has a note in here, and again, this is a live show, so if you have a question or a comment, throw it in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to it during the show. If not, I'll make sure I get it in the chat afterwards. Larry says, "Hi, Chief. Thanks to you, Lindsay, the entire force, and the VIPs. Those are volunteers and police services, the ones that wear the white shirt. For a great open house last Saturday. A lot of effort went into a truly first-class operation. Drone demo, canine demo, food. What's not to like?" Yeah, we kind of funny. The food were hot dogs, and I try to eat pretty healthy, but I had 3 hot dogs that day. It was pretty bad. We always say to all of you that if you want a good neighborhood watch, if you want to get support for your community group, to throw some food out there. So we had to have some food out there. But it was a good event, and the whole purpose was to show the community the tools and the tactics that we use, but then also have you meet as many of us as possible so you can have a relationship with the people that serve you every day. The other thing that we had there is we also had some scenarios. We call them the amusement park rides. So if you were to have come down, you'd have had an opportunity to be an officer on a car stop. You'd have had an opportunity to be an officer during a force encounter where maybe you have to use your communication skills. We would help you on how to de-escalate, do all of those things. And so pretty challenging, but pretty fun. Most importantly, very enlightening on what it's like to be a police officer. Larry, thank you. And Lou, appreciate it. Thanks. All right. So we just made an arrest yesterday. I do want to highlight it because I think it's important, and our officers did a great job. And if you look at the thefts that we had, they're, stealing from Lucky's and Walgreens and Lunardi's and Bevmo, right? It seems like every week I'm telling you we're getting people that are stealing from those. And it's clear to us based on how they're happening, the frequency that they're happening, that it is an organized retail theft pattern. And so our officers just did a great job. Yesterday, the biggest kudos, aside from our hardworking officers, really goes to Lucky's for reporting this so quickly. So yesterday at about 7:45, the Lucky's store quickly reported a theft, and they provided a vehicle description. Our officers were in the area. They located and stopped the vehicle on San Ramon Valley Boulevard at Padva. Ultimately, through their investigation, they recovered a bunch of property. I think it was close to $4,500 worth of merchandise from the stores. And they booked the 3 men for organized retail theft, shoplifting, burglary, and conspiracy. And they booked them up at the Martinez jail on $80,000 bail. I think one also had a probation violation, so he was going to be staying with no bail. And then the thefts were from, and I needed to amend this because I just found out about 10 minutes before the show, the thefts were from Lucky's, Lunardi's, and Bevmo. And so they were just hitting every store they could, and our officers just did a really good job. And this is why we pride ourselves as our officer actually was aware of this vehicle from prior thefts and was really immediately started putting things together, clearly could see the merchandise in the back, and just did a really good job. So let's take a look at what they did take. So on the right, you can see that is a photo of the 3 suspects in this case being detained while the officers are searching the vehicle. If you see some of the other pictures here, we've got a picture of a lot of alcohol, a lot of wine on the right, and it looks like some bourbon on the left there. And then up top, meat. There's some lobster tails in there. There's some shrimp and some Sensodyne toothpaste, a little hygiene, and some drumsticks. Not sure. I think they're hitting all the bases for a party there. But this is merchandise. A lot of this merchandise can't then be resold. So our stores are still out this money, and that's no good. But our officers were able to return what merchandise they could to the stores, and it was to Lucky's, Lunardi's, and Bevmo. And so the hope is, and this is why we're so assertive, is we know that people that steal, that come into town and they steal from multiple stores, they're likely to continue and continue. And if they're not stopped, they're going to keep going. So remember, we talk about the crime triangle. The first is the motivated offender. The second is the site or the location. And the third leg is the target. So the target in this case is the wine, the alcohol, and all those. And our stores actually do a pretty good job of placing the alcohol. Like if you look at Lucky's, it's a good example. The cash register that is always open faces the alcohol, right? So there's natural surveillance. There's usually a cashier that's right there. They can see the aisle. And the only exit is right in front of them too. So they've engineered that area so they can see when a theft occurs, which is, I'm sure, why they were able to point out and say, hey, we just had someone run out with some merchandise. And then if you look at so that's the target and the location. The motivated offender, this is what I talk about, is your police department being assertive and arresting these people sends the message, if you're a motivated offender, don't come to Danville and do that. All right. So that's how we combat some of that crime using the good old crime triangle. All right. I don't see any other. Oh, Celeste, I saw you popped in there. Great job catching these thieves. Celeste, appreciate it. In fact, I talked to the officer, and he said that the people working at the stores were very, very grateful. And I could, everybody always wants to know, like, how can we show thanks to the police. Do you want muffins? Or, we get a lot of gifts. This is a very grateful community. But I tell you, the best thing is just the actual verbalizing of the gratitude. Because he walked in and the officer was telling me how grateful the staff were and how they thanked him for catching these guys. And you could tell it's a relief, because if you're one of the workers at these stores, or you're the owner of the store, you don't want to be ripped off all the time. It's frustrating to see people come in to your store that you care for and take things from it, and what appears to be nothing getting done. And so there was a lot of kudos there, and that is the fuel for a police officer's tank, is that thank you and that handshake. And I can tell you, I've gotten a lot of handshakes in my career, and a gratitude handshake is one of the most powerful things you can do. It feels really good. So, Steve, Steve, I don't know how to take that comment, and I'm going to say it on the air. Your hair is too long. Yeah, it's a little gray and long. There's a lot of things you can point out about the chief that he needs to probably fix. All right. So with that, I don't see any other comments or questions. So we are 10:10, but before we do, I just want to remind you, make sure you download the Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation Guide, the FEMA All Hazards Guide, sign up for Community Warning System, and go to the PG&E website. There's a lot of really good information there. The other is just be aware, we do have these traffic cameras in town. They are meant to do traffic data counts, and they're used by our transportation department. They're not used for, spying on people and those sort of things. Just know that they're used by our transportation unit. With that, we're 10:10, but we're always 10:8 and in service to all of you. Have a good night, Danville.